happy to announce that we are embarking on critical reforms at the lands and natural resource sector, especially in the mining sector. We are currently very far advanced in renewing and reforming our mining policy. We are also reforming our licensing policy and introducing what we call cooperative mining to ensure we work with experienced large-scale mining companies to empower communities and show them the right ways of mining responsibly and sustainably. Ghana is a leader in responsible mining where government, industry, and communities collaborate to ensure long-term benefits. To our international partners here today, I present Ghana not just as a mining destination, but as a proof that responsible investment and transformative development can go hand in hand.
This is Ghana, a nation quite literally built on a bedrock of gold. For centuries, the world knew it as the Gold Coast, a place of almost unimaginable mineral wealth. Today, it's Africa's #1 gold producer, a giant in the global mining industry. Every year, billions of dollars in gleaming gold bars are pulled from its soil. Giant machines, the titans of modern industry, chew through the earth to get to the treasure buried beneath. It's a story of incredible wealth. But that's just one side of the story. There's another one. A story about the communities living right on top of this treasure. A story of rivers turned the color of mud, of cleared forests, and of promises of prosperity that have mostly turned to dust. It's a question that's haunted this nation for generations. How can a land so rich be home to communities that have seen so little of the wealth? For decades, the system has worked like this. Extract the resources, send the profits overseas, and tax money to the central government, and often leave behind deep environmental scars and deeply frustrated communities. But now, Ghana is fighting back. In its biggest mining shakeup in nearly 20 years, the nation is proposing to tear up the old rulebook. A radical new legal framework promises to fundamentally rewrite the relationship between the nation, the powerful multinational corporations that extract its wealth, and the people who call this land home. So the big question is, who really wins and who loses in this high-stakes battle for Ghana's future? Will this bold reform finally bring justice to local communities? Will it scare off the foreign investors the country relies on? Or will the environment end up paying the ultimate price? This is a battle for the soul of Ghana's most valuable industry, and its outcome will be felt across the entire African continent. To get why Ghana is taking this dramatic step, you have to understand the old way of doing things. You have to look past the headline numbers and into the complicated, often painful, history of mining here. Long before it was called Ghana, this region was the heart of the Ashanti Empire, a kingdom whose power was built on gold. The metal wasn't just a commodity, it was woven into the very fabric of culture and royalty. But with great wealth came intense foreign interest, and the name Gold Coast became a magnet for European traders and eventually colonizers. The colonial model was simple: extraction. Get the gold out of the ground and back to Europe as fast as possible. The infrastructure that was built, the railways, the ports, all served that one goal. Developing local communities was an afterthought, if it was a thought at all. When Ghana won its independence in 1957, becoming the first sub-Saharan African nation to do so, there was a massive surge of hope. The nation's natural resources, once exploited by foreign powers, would now build a new, prosperous Ghana for Ghanaians. But the decades that followed were a constant struggle to break free from that old extractive model. In the modern era, the industry was governed by the Minerals and Mining Act of 2006. On paper, it was designed to do one thing: attract the huge foreign investment needed for large-scale industrial mining. It offered juicy incentives that made Ghana a top destination for the world's mining giants. Chief among them were long-term mining leases, granted for up to 30 years, and stability agreements, which could lock in tax rates and regulations for as long as 15 years. Think about that from an investor's perspective. You're a multinational corporation planning to sink hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars into a mine. You want certainty. You need to know the rules won't suddenly change on you. A 30-year lease gives you a long runway to plan, operate, and make your money back. And a 15-year stability agreement. That's basically an insurance policy against political risk, protecting you from sudden tax hikes or costly new rules. It was a system designed to make capital feel safe. And it worked. Companies like Newmont, Goldfields, and AngloGold Ashanti rushed into Ghana, making it the continent's top gold producer. In 2024 alone, the mining sector paid a staggering 17.7 billion Ghanaian cedis in taxes to the government, a 51% jump from the previous year. Dividends paid to the state shot up by over 600%. Over the last decade, total mineral revenue topped $40 billion. This is a ton of money, essential for the national budget, funding everything from government salaries to infrastructure. But a growing number of people started asking a sharp question. If all this wealth is being generated, why are the areas it comes from so often left behind? For years, even the Ghana Chamber of Mines has pointed out the massive gap. The system sent royalties and taxes into one big central pot, the Consolidated Fund. From there, the money was spent on national priorities, but only a tiny fraction ever trickled back to the specific towns whose land and water were being directly hit by the mines. The result was a paradox you couldn't ignore. Communities sitting on top of gold mines often didn't have basic things like paved roads, decent clinics, or clean drinking water. This frustration wasn't just about money. It was deeply social. The arrival of a big mine often meant farmers and whole communities were displaced. Jobs were promised, but modern mining is highly mechanized, meaning many of the jobs were for specialized technicians, often expats, not the local population. The social fabric of quiet, rural areas was often torn apart by the sudden influx of people and cash. And then there's the environmental cost. Large-scale mining, by its nature, is destructive. It means moving massive amounts of earth, using powerful chemicals to get the gold, and creating huge dams to store toxic waste. A key complaint in Ghana has been the pollution of major rivers. The use of mercury and other chemicals, especially in the unregulated small-scale sector that pops up around big mines, has devastated water quality, killing fish, and making the water unsafe for drinking or farming. The frustration and lack of opportunity from the formal system also fueled a massive parallel crisis. Illegal small-scale mining, known locally as galamsey. This is the dark side of Ghana's gold rush. With few other ways to make a living, thousands of young Ghanaians have turned to galamsey, often working in incredibly dangerous conditions, using mercury with their bare hands, and causing catastrophic environmental damage. They dig wherever they can, destroying cocoa farms and polluting rivers without a second thought. While the government has fought battles against galamsey for years, it's really a symptom of a deeper problem. A system where most local people felt completely cut off from the mineral wealth under their own feet. This was the old way. A system that was great at generating revenue for the government and profits for foreign investors, but terrible at sharing the benefits with the people on the ground. It was a pressure cooker, and by 2025, the government decided it was time to release the valve and redesign the entire machine. In mid-2025, the Ghanaian government announced it was kicking off the biggest overhaul of its mining laws in a generation. This isn't just a little tweak. It's a fundamental shakeup of the rules, designed to hit the failures of the past head-on. Let's break down the key parts of this proposed new framework, because each one is a direct answer to a long-standing problem. First up, and this is a big one, the new framework targets how long and how secure mining licenses are. The old 30-year mining leases, they're on the way out. Going forward, the length of the lease is planned to be shorter and negotiated directly between the government and the company. The days of set it and forget it for 3 decades are over. At the same time, the government is getting rid of indefinite prospecting licenses, which let companies sit on huge areas of land for exploration without ever having to develop them. Prospecting licenses will now have fixed, shorter terms with a clear use it or lose it rule. The second major change is the end of automatic renewals. Under the old system, getting a renewal was often a sure thing. Now, it's going to be conditional. A company's right to renew its license will be tied directly to its performance on its environmental, social, and production promises. If a company pollutes rivers, fails to work with the community, or doesn't produce what it said it would, it could lose its right to keep operating. That creates a powerful new reason to be a good corporate citizen. Third, and this is the part that gives local communities the most hope, is the requirement for direct revenue sharing. The old model of sending all the money to the capital is being scrapped. The new law will require mining companies to put a fixed percentage of their gross mineral revenue directly into funds for local development projects. This money will no longer be a discretionary handout or a PR project. It will be a legal requirement. A direct pipeline of wealth from the mine to the community. This means predictable funding for schools, clinics, and roads, all managed locally. Fourth, the government is rolling out a new 3-tier mineral rights system. For decades, the sector had 2 extremes: massive multinational corporations on one side and small-scale artisanal miners, often illegal, on the other. The new law creates a formal, medium-scale license category to bridge that gap. The goal is to empower Ghanaian entrepreneurs to operate and grow in a regulated space, creating a more diverse and locally owned mining sector. Finally, the reforms take aim at the controversial stability agreements. Those 15-year deals that shielded companies from tax changes are set to be drastically cut back or eliminated for all new contracts. From now on, any stability clauses will only last long enough for a company to make back its initial investment. Once that's paid off, the company is subject to the same laws as everyone else. Crucially, in a smart move to calm the nerves of international investors, the government has made one thing clear. These reforms will not be retroactive. Existing agreements will be honored. This is a sharp contrast to recent moves in nearby Mali and Burkina Faso, where new governments have tried to change contracts after the fact, creating chaos and conflict with mining companies. Ghana is trying to thread a very fine needle, change the rules for the future, without breaking the promises of the past. So, the new framework is on the table. But what does it actually mean for the 3 key players in this game? The locals, the investors, and the environment. For communities in Ghana's mining regions, these reforms feel like the sun might finally be rising after a very, very long night. The promise of direct revenue sharing is the big headline. For generations, they've been told the nation's wealth is their wealth, only to watch it flow right past them. The new proposal is the first time that a real predictable share of that wealth is legally required to stop in their towns. Imagine you're a community leader in a place like Tarkwa or Obuasi, the heart of Ghanaian gold mining. For years you've had to go, hat in hand, to the government in Accra to beg for money for a new school roof or a clean water well. You've tried to negotiate with mining companies for corporate social responsibility projects, which are welcome, but often inconsistent and totally up to the company. Now, the whole dynamic could change. The community will have a legal right to a slice of the value of every ounce of gold that comes out of the ground nearby. This creates a sense of ownership and partnership that never existed. The conversation shifts from, "What can you give us?" to "What will we build with our share?" It empowers local leaders to plan for the long term. They can budget for road repairs, invest in job training for young people, or set up farming projects to diversify the local economy. Plus, making license renewals depend on social and environmental performance gives these communities real power. If a company isn't living up to its promises, if it's damaging farmland or polluting the air, the community now has a new weapon. They can document these failures and use them as a reason for regulators to deny a license renewal. It gives them a seat at the table, turning them from powerless bystanders into active stakeholders whose voices have to be heard. The backing of powerful traditional leaders, like the Asantehene Otumfuo Osei-Tutu, also adds serious weight to this new community-first approach. Of course, the optimism is cautious. Decades of broken promises have built up a deep well of cynicism. The big question on everyone's mind is implementation. Who's going to manage these local development funds? Will they be handled transparently? Or will they just become a new source of local corruption? Will the community truly have a say, or will a few elites control the money? The success of this whole thing hinges on the answers. But for the first time in a long time, there's a real reason for hope. Now, let's step into the boardroom of a major mining firm in London, Toronto, or Johannesburg. From their chair, Ghana has just significantly changed the rules of the game. For decades, Ghana was seen as a stable, predictable, and investor-friendly place in a sometimes rocky region. These new reforms have introduced a new set of variables, and from their point of view, a new level of risk. Shorter license durations are a major concern. A modern gold mine is a long-haul project. It can take years and hundreds of millions of dollars just to explore a site and see if it's even worth mining. Then you have to build the thing, which can take several more years and cost over $1 billion. Companies make these huge upfront bets based on models that project revenue over 20 or 30 years. When you shrink that timeline, it makes it harder to get financing and could make some less profitable projects a non-starter. The end of automatic renewals and the new performance conditions add another layer of uncertainty. While everyone agrees that protecting the environment and communities is important, terms like failing to meet social obligations can be subjective. What one official considers a major failure, another might see as a minor issue. This creates a fear of what investors call sovereign risk, the risk that a government could use vague terms as an excuse to deny renewal for a valuable asset, maybe to give it to a friendlier company. The government's decision not to renew Goldfields Ghana Limited's Tarkwa lease, even before these reforms, was seen by some as a worrying sign. And of course, cutting back on stability agreements is a huge deal. That 15-year insurance policy against changing tax laws is gone. A company might now invest $1 billion based on a 5% royalty rate, only for a new government to come in 5 years later and jack it up to 10%, completely changing the project's profitability. That's a very real financial risk. But the picture isn't all bad for investors. Ghana's decision to not apply these laws retroactively is a massive point in its favor. It signals a respect for the rule of law and existing contracts, which builds a lot of trust. It tells investors that Ghana, unlike some of its neighbors, isn't just setting fire to everything overnight. It's managing a slow transition. Besides, smart investors know the old model was becoming unsustainable. The constant social conflicts, protests, illegal mining, and environmental damage created their own serious risks and operational costs. A stable, happy community is a much better business partner than an angry, frustrated one. The new laws, by giving communities a direct stake in a mine's success, could actually lead to a more stable operating environment in the long run. It could mean fewer protests and shutdowns, which are incredibly expensive for mining companies. The new reality for investors is that the price of a mining license in Ghana is no longer just about taxes and fees. The price of admission now includes a real, legally binding commitment to the community and the environment. It forces a shift in the business model, away from pure extraction and toward a partnership. The companies that will thrive in Ghana's new era will be the ones that see this not just as a cost, but as a core part of doing business. With battle lines drawn between the hopes of communities and the anxieties of investors, a third silent player hangs in the balance: the environment. The reforms tie license renewals directly to environmental performance, which on paper is a powerful tool. But the question is, will it be enough to heal the deep environmental scars of the past and stop new ones from being cut into the landscape? On paper, the logic behind the new law is solid. By making a company's future in Ghana dependent on its environmental record, the government is trying to turn good environmental practice from a nice-to-have into a must-do. In theory, this should force companies to invest in better water management systems to stop polluting rivers like the Pra and the Ankabra. It should make them get serious about land rehabilitation, ensuring that when a mine closes, the land is restored, not left as a barren moonscape. This is a direct answer to decades of weak oversight. Ghana's Environmental Protection Agency has often been criticized as being under-resourced and unable to properly monitor the massive operations of multinational miners. The new law essentially makes the renewal process itself the ultimate enforcer. However, a tool is only as good as the person wielding it. The first challenge is monitoring. Checking a mining company's environmental compliance is a highly technical job. It needs sophisticated equipment, independent data, and trained staff. Will Ghana's Environmental Protection Agency get the funding and authority it needs to conduct tough, unannounced inspections and produce reports that can stand up in court against high-priced corporate lawyers? The second challenge is the potential for loopholes and greenwashing. A company might check all the legal boxes on paper while still causing major damage over time. They can publish glossy sustainability reports and fund flashy conservation projects, all while the core problems of water pollution or habitat loss get worse. The pressure to keep the tax revenue flowing is huge, and there will always be a temptation for regulators to look the other way on certain issues to keep a major taxpayer running. Ultimately, the environmental success of these reforms won't be decided in Parliament, but out in the fields and along the rivers. It will depend on the vigilance of local communities, now empowered to act as watchdogs. It will depend on the courage of activists to hold both companies and the government accountable. And it will depend on the political will to actually make the tough call and deny a license to a powerful, profitable company that breaks the rules. The law has provided the teeth, but we have yet to see if the government is prepared to bite. Ghana isn't walking this path alone. Its reforms are part of a larger trend of resource nationalism across Africa. Countries from the Sahel to Southern Africa are rewriting the old deals and demanding a bigger slice of the pie. In this context, Ghana can learn a lot from the experiences of its neighbors. The best example of what can go right is Botswana. Like Ghana, Botswana's economy depended almost entirely on one thing: diamonds. But from the start, the government took a completely different approach. It formed a joint venture with the mining giant De Beers, called Debswana. The government of Botswana owns 50% of the company. This wasn't just about collecting taxes. It was about being a true partner in the business. The diamond profits were systematically invested in national development, funding universal healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Botswana went from being one of the poorest countries in the world to an upper-middle income nation. The key was strong governance, a long-term vision, and a focus on transparency that stopped the wealth from being lost to corruption. This is the model Ghana's reforms are aiming for, but at the community level. But there are also cautionary tales. In recent years, military-led governments in countries like Mali and Guinea have also moved to increase state control over mining. Mali's government is pushing to raise its ownership in mines from 20% to 35% and has applied these changes retroactively, sparking major fights with international mining firms. This aggressive approach has created massive uncertainty for investors and in some cases has caused operations to shut down, stopping the flow of revenue completely. Ghana's government seems to have studied these cases closely. By making it clear its new laws won't apply retroactively, It's trying to get a bigger national benefit without causing the kind of capital flight seen elsewhere. It's a strategic choice, a calculated bet to find a middle ground between Botswana's partnership model and the more confrontational approach of its West African neighbors. Ghana is betting that it can change the future without spooking investors by trying to rewrite the past. A perfectly written law can still fail spectacularly if it's poorly implemented. As Ghana moves from policy to practice, it faces huge challenges that will decide whether these reforms truly transform the nation or just create a new set of problems. The single greatest threat is corruption. The new system is designed to channel millions of dollars directly into local development funds. While meant to empower communities, this also creates a new tempting pot of money for corrupt local officials or powerful chiefs. Without ironclad transparency and accountability, there's a real danger these funds could be mismanaged or stolen, leading to the same old problems of inequality and frustration, just at a more local level. To fight this, there needs to be a strong system of public oversight. Details of how much money is coming in and exactly how it's being spent must be public and easy to access. The media and civil society groups have a huge role to play here, monitoring the funds and sounding the alarm at the first sign of trouble. And there needs to be real community participation in decisions to make sure the projects being funded are what people actually need, not just the pet projects of the powerful. There's also the question of capacity. Managing development projects, overseeing budgets, and negotiating with multinational corporations requires skills. Do local community committees have the expertise to handle these new responsibilities? There will be a critical need for training programs to teach local leaders project management, financial accounting, and contract negotiation. Without that support, they could easily be outmaneuvered by companies or overwhelmed by the work. The success of the new medium-scale license also depends on supporting local entrepreneurs. It's not enough to just create a license. The government has to make sure Ghanaian companies can get the financing, technology, and geological data they need to compete. This is a vital step in building a truly homegrown mining industry. This is one of the most important economic stories happening in Africa right now, and the debate is far from over. What do you think? Is Ghana's new framework a blueprint for the future, or a risky gamble that could backfire? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to keep up with in-depth analysis of major economic shifts, like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel. So Ghana finds itself at historic crossroads. The nation has embarked on a bold experiment to fundamentally rebalance the scales of power in its most important industry. It's a three-way tug-of-war, with the hopes of local communities pulling one way, the financial needs of global investors pulling another, and the fragile health of the environment hanging in the middle. These proposed laws are a powerful statement. They declare that the wealth of the land must, first and foremost, benefit the people of the land. They seek to replace a purely extractive model with one based on partnership, shared prosperity, and accountability. It is an attempt to build a future where the gold that has defined Ghana for centuries enriches not just the state and foreign shareholders, but also the very communities who live on top of it. But the road ahead is full of traps. The success of this grand reform won't be measured by the elegance of its legal text, but by its messy, real-world implementation. It will depend on the government's unwavering commitment to enforcement, on the transparency of the new revenue-sharing system, and on the active engagement of its people. It is a high-wire act, an attempt to create development and justice without killing the foreign investment that fuels the economic engine. The world is watching. Other resource-rich nations across the continent are watching. The outcome of Ghana's great mining shakeup will send a powerful message. Will it become a celebrated model of how an African nation can take control of its economic destiny? Or will it become a cautionary tale of good intentions undone by the tough challenges of corruption and implementation? The legacy of this generation of Ghanaian leaders, and the future of the nation's most precious resource, all hang in the balance.